SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
DraftKings is more than willing to try a bold idea. They're also more than willing to walk it back. This week, DraftKings announced the soft launch of DraftKings Plus, a subscription service where bettors can pay $20 a month to get more favorable odds on their parlay bets. Is this a genius idea or destined to go the way of the customer surcharge? We'll discuss just that on today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I am Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas, joined as always by Charlie Horder, media manager, and we have Ted Orme-Claye, the editor of Payment Expert and Insider Sports, with us. Thank you for joining us, Ted. It's nice to have a different voice in the booth with us.
No, thanks very much for having me. I don't think I've collaborated with you guys on a podcast for some time. So, yeah, it's very nice to join you again.
I figured you just saw all the many episodes, or heard all of the many episodes, I guess, where we have discussed DraftKings at length, and you're like, I need in on at least one of these. Because this idea, it certainly shook things up. So do you guys know the gist of how this whole DraftKings Plus thing works? Charlie is nodding, forgetting that this is an audio medium. But, okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is an exciting one, I guess. And, listeners will remember the surcharge debacle of 2024. And this is another new sort of innovation that DraftKings have come out with to just to try and boost the top line, just to, increase the margins that they're operating at. So, I'm intrigued to see where this one goes.
Yeah, so the gist of it, for those of you who haven't heard about it, is that they're piloting it right now in New York with select customers that, you pay this $20 a month fee, and basically for every leg that you add to your parlay, you can boost it by 10%. So I think it's like, you have a 3-leg parlay, you can get 10% boosted odds. If you have an 11-leg parlay or something like that, you can actually double the potential for your payout. And they seem to suggest this may not be open to everyone, given the limiting discussions we've had about sports books and stuff. I mean, just on its surface, is this something that would appeal to you as a bettor?
I'll go first. This isn't really something that would entice me to be honest. A subscription service for streaming, I get. A subscription for, I know some people do things like meal prep on subscription. I understand that, but as a bettor, that's something that I could do anyway. I think getting better odds from a subscription service is not really something that I would like to take up now.
Ted, are you an accumulator bettor? Would this be of any use to you?
I think I'm probably more in Charlie's camp on this one. Yeah, I like the comparison he made, where it's not quite the same as, say, a subscription streaming service. I think it really depends on the consumer's individual consumption habits. As you sort of like accumulator bettors and things like that might be a bit more geared towards them. But me personally, as and when I do place a bet, is very one-off. Like, I just tend to say that, a big boxing match, for example, that interests me, I'll just go, okay, I might put a few quid on that. I can imagine this might appeal a bit more to, it's been trialed in New York, right? Is that right?
Correct.
So yeah, I can see why they've done it in that regard. They're just sort of testing the waters in New York, which is obviously a very big state, high population, a lot of sports teams. So maybe they're just taking a look at it and thinking, right, let's see what people in New York might want to try this out by making a bit more of a regular payment to get boosted odds on some of their sort of favorite local sports teams. But it's only going to appeal to a very sort of niche segment of the wider betting population, I think. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, from what I've from what I remember, we've not really seen anything like this in Europe so far. So I'm finding it quite interesting to see some of these big US sports books taking a bit more of a niche approach to the payment side of things.
Yeah, I think too, you have to remember that American bettors, I think one of the big fundamental differences is, and we've seen this throughout, we've really leaned into parlays and same game parlays. I mean, it's like 70% of NFL betting at I'm trying to remember which site it was yesterday was done on parlays. As you guys might know, I like to play poker at the casino in Cincinnati. I have a lot of friends who show me their parlays that they won, and I kind of asked them this weekend, just anecdotally, what do you think about this? And they were like, I mean, for $20, I'd do it. Get to juice these odds a little bit. It's not for me. I hate like logging into my credit card and seeing like the 7 subscriptions I've already forgotten about, which is, part of the genius of the subscription model is you forget to cancel it. Going back to what you were saying, Ted, about New York, I have seen some conflicting reports on that this subscription fee might arguably not be taxable as sports betting revenue. I have also seen some people say they don't think that's the case. I don't believe the New York Gaming Commission has commented one way or another on this one yet, but Charlie, given what we know about New York and its tax rate, is that where your head kind of went on it initially, especially after the whole surcharge thing?
Yeah, immediately when I saw this, I thought this was another way of DraftKings trying to get around that 51% tax rate. And I don't blame them for it. It's something that the sports books, particularly DraftKings and FanDuel, have been trying to get around, and I think they've been lobbying to lower that tax rate for quite some time now. One thing that we've said on the podcast many times before is that those operators went into New York fully aware that the tax rate was 51%. So they don't really have a leg to stand on. But these new sort of innovative features and new products, I don't think you can begrudge DraftKings trying, and it's up to consumers themselves whether they want to take them up on that. Like you've said anecdotally, Jess, some people are willing to do that for extra odds. I don't know what the likes of Dave Ramsey and those consumer finance guys are thinking about another subscription model being added into the mix for people to take up on, but I think it's a really interesting approach and something that we could see in, states like Illinois, where there is that tiered tax rate, or Ohio, where the tax rate has recently doubled, and Pennsylvania, where the tax rate is a little bit higher too. So it's a new wave. The surcharge didn't quite work out. Maybe the subscription model is where things are leading to for the industry.
Here's an interesting wrinkle to this too. We asked DraftKings, they wouldn't give us exactly how they select who gets this. Would you be surprised if this is somewhat limited to losing parlay bettors, and this is a product that not just anyone can get their hands on?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think DraftKings have said that their hold rate is around 11%, and that this is probably a mechanism to try and boost that up a little bit further. So they don't talk about the parlay mix trying to be ever higher in their earnings calls, so they can lose more money to winning bettors. They probably want more people to lose, and that's a good way of attracting people.
Yeah, I mean, this one too, I think common, knowledge or assumption is that sharper bettors generally don't bet 9-leg parlays in general. I do know some people, though, like I've seen Unabated and stuff like that run some numbers on SGPs, so a little better true odds and how close you're getting to true odds. That I don't think it's a market that is wholly untapped by the more sharp wagerer. However, I don't know if this is one where they're just like maybe we do offer it to everyone because we assume these guys just wouldn't take advantage of it. I doubt that they're that friendly. But Ted, what do you think?
The industry is hardly unaccustomed to, coming up with sort of new and slightly edgy ways of acquiring and retaining customers. But yeah, given that you at the end of the day, you don't want to give boosted odds to just every single person. I think they will probably tailor this initially to, like you said, a more specific segment, and then really see how that goes. Will it if it has some good high acquisition rates, high retention rates, maybe they'll start to roll it out more. The other thing to talk about is whether they roll this out in other states and other markets, depending on how the New York performance goes. I think you mentioned this in your intro, didn't you, Jess, that DraftKings they've shown that they're not afraid to test out a new sort of innovative, or for want of a better word, platform or program system, whatever you want to say. But they've also shown that they're not afraid to walk that back. I mean, the big one that we can talk about here that kind of bridges both of our beats is the whole NFT marketplace, wasn't it? That was quite a big platform of theirs for a couple of years, and then given some different recent circumstances, they've decided to pull the plug on that one. So yeah, they're not afraid to try something out. They won't be afraid to widen the net, as you said. But they also won't be afraid to go, well, that wasn't too successful. Let's knock that on the head.
Especially when they lose a motion to dismiss on a potentially extremely expensive class action lawsuit. That'll do it. You're right, though. They very quickly pulled the plug on Marketplace. They did not double down or try to fix that once it kind of went south. You guys can go back and listen to the episode where we discussed the short-lived, bright but short life of the surcharge in high-tax states that nobody really picked up or adopted.
Lean On is an iGaming SaaS provider that helps operators launch their businesses in minutes within an easy-to-use environment. During ICE Barcelona, Lean On will showcase the auction of 3 websites starting from €499 and the exclusive, fully operating casino website for only €5,000. Make sure to visit Lean On at their stand during ICE Barcelona to find out more.
Do you think other operators see, does this one have a chance of succeeding in your mind? Is it going to go to more states, or other operators going to, dip their toe in and maybe try to roll out something similar?
I could see that happening personally. Yeah, if like I said, if this proves a successful trial in New York, I don't see any reason why other operators wouldn't have a crack at it. That's hardly something this industry, whether in the US or in other markets, it isn't used to. Operators are always taking ideas from each other and taking inspiration from each other when there's a successful product. I think something as well that I've come across in my discussions with operators, payments teams and finance teams, tech teams and things like that is obviously the US is a very competitive market. DraftKings is one of the leaders, but it's still facing stiff competition from the likes of FanDuel and BetMGM and then some of the other smaller ones and up-and-comers. A solution like this, if it proves successful, could be one that's a good way of setting you out from the competition of attracting new customers to say, here's something we can offer you. So yeah, if it proves to be successful in that regard, other operators will want to close the gap, however small the gap it may be. They will want to catch up on that and offer a similar sort of offering themselves.
Charlie, what do you think? Is this got a longer shelf life than surcharges?
Well, Ted put it so eloquently, but I think the proof is in the pudding, really. If this takes off, if this adds to DraftKings' bottom line, if it comes up in earnings calls that it's been a success, I'm sure others will follow, because it is a competitive landscape, and that those top two, that they are battling for number one spot. And I think it'll last longer than surcharge. I think what was surcharge, a couple of weeks,
even like 10 days, 9 days, something like that. And my eggs lasted longer, in the fridge. But Yeah, we'll see. We'll say timing more on their side, because that surcharge one came out like right before the earnings calls. And so all of the analysts were quick to hop on those questions. We've got a couple months still. We got like 4 or 5 weeks before these really start rolling out, that I'm sure you'll get them, but the fervor may have died down. I also, to put a bit of a damper on what I do think is an interesting, innovative idea. And the more I talk to people who do place these bets, it does seem like something there's a lot of interest in. Time to mention that Flutter had an announcement this week as well related to parlays, which was that, listen, did they still rake in money hand over fist betting or accepting parlays in Q4? Yes. Did they have like an abundance of winning parlays? Yes. They called it the highest rate of favorites winning in nearly 20 years. They noted a $438 million negative impact on GGR. And he specifically said, we just had a bunch of parlays and same game parlays that won. And for that reason, we have to revise our revenue guidance by 9 figures. So I think that begs kind of the question. DraftKings and FanDuel especially have lived and died by building up their hold and trying to get their hold as high as possible. FanDuel, I believe, said in their investor day that they wanted their hold to hit 16% by 2030. I mean, when sports betting launched in the U.S., I think we all thought it would be like Nevada, would be like 6%, and now we're talking about 16%. Are they playing with fire with pushing people to these, highly improbable but potentially very expensive parlays?
I think that's the risk that you take when you make a decision to put such an emphasis on the parlay mix. For the most part, it works in the favor of the operator, because most of the time it's hard to hit a parlay, right? I mean, all of us have probably done it, and it's very rare that you actually win a big parlay, which is why the operators make so much money out of it. You're always going to get that unlucky spell where players win. I think October as well was a particularly tough month for sports books. I think we were talking about that earlier in the NFL season, Jess. It's the risk that you take. These operators have put a lot of investment into it. It's not long ago that DraftKings concluded the acquisition of SimpleBet and Tane. They brought Angstrom Sports in, and it's all part of this effort to increase that parlay mix. But sometimes, even with all this advanced technology, you still lose. That's the industry. So, it's the risk you take.
Ted, is kind of the outsider looking in, and someone who maybe isn't as enmeshed in seeing some of these hold percentages and revenue rates. Does it shock you, some of these numbers we're throwing around about how much parlays impact bottom line for these U.S. sports books?
Oof. I don't think so, because I think the parlay, the accumulator, whatever you want to call it, has become such an integral part of the modern betting product. I don't really find that surprising. Just sort of based on my experience and knowledge of the UK betting market and how that's developed over the past few years. And sort of compare that to the US, and also just sort of the similarities in sports consumption and sports fandom. I think that you can find between what I'm used to and then what you've got in America. I don't actually find that too surprising that parlays have such a substantial impact on operator revenues.
And then, kind of question to round this out: do you guys think that this subscription idea, or these kinds of very parlay forward products, do they make the jump across the pond, or this is just not the way that Europeans are ever going to bet?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Again, the point I would make that I think there's points you can make in favor of it and points you can make against it. I mean, one of the points I could make in favor is that consumers, I think, in both Europe and the US do have some similarities, particularly in the way they pay. Pay for products, particularly online ones. subscriptions in general are becoming huge across the board in various forms of entertainment. We've mentioned sports streaming, which is obviously one that's heavily linked to betting anyway. So there is the argument you can make there. Why should it not make the leap into betting? I think another important fact to consider here, though, is kind of the responsible gaming element, and a lot of the conversations we're having around that in both countries. I guess you could argue on the one hand, this could be seen as positive for responsible gaming, because you could say, well, if someone's just making a subscription payment of £20, $20, €20, whatever, into their monthly betting account, and they're a casual, low stakes bettor, that is almost responsible, because it's sort of stopping them from getting carried away and potentially just chucking money in every weekend and putting it on all sorts. It's almost like that's their budget for their low stakes sports betting hobby. On the other hand, you could say, well, surely setting up a subscription is a way of just encouraging someone to put this in month after month without even thinking about it. So I think you've kind of got, whether or not it could take off in Europe, I think you might have to frame that in the context of these discussions we've been having, very heated discussions at times, we've been having around responsible betting and affordability in the UK, in the Netherlands, Belgium, Ireland, and other European nations.
I mean, we're seeing a bit of it here. I haven't seen too much of a backlash around this, but the fleet of class action lawsuits against DraftKings in particular, there's one that is moving forward in Massachusetts State Court. There's a similar one in, I believe, New York. Just looking at kind of these enticements, these inducement offers when you sign up, and how the fine print tells a different story than the big ad is one that continues to draw a lot of attention. All right, Charlie, take us home. Is DraftKings England going to take over with DraftKings Plus in the future?
It's an interesting one. It really is interesting, because the US is such a trailblazer just in terms of financial and economic transactions, really. I mean, the UK and Europe is so influenced by the US in so many sectors that I guess betting could be next. Often we do talk about the US learning its trade from Europe when it comes to betting, but maybe this is the time when Europe starts looking across the pond and taking some ideas from the other side.
Yeah, who knows? All right, we are all out of time. You can check out all of these stories that we've been discussing on SBC Americas. Be sure to check out what Ted and his team are doing at Insider Sport and Payment Expert. And then Charlie is all over the network this week. I think I've seen like 7 different stories from you. So you are off to a fast and furious 2025. And of course, be sure to tune in every day for the latest news from the iGaming world on iGaming Daily.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.